She has been working on 2 books, US 101 for Dummies in Chinese and China 101 for Dummies in English, promoting better Sino-US relationships and understanding between the 2 countries ever since she joined this Toastmasters group about a year ago. Thanks for the inspiration from Chris Anderson. Imagine Yuanting is going to sell her books to some potential buyers in China or in the US. Yuanting would like to use this opportunity to practice her public relations skills and time management. Yuanting.
Got to unmute myself. Everyone, I just took on this huge task last night, so it won't be perfect. Just so you know. Professional sports is a pacifier to a lot of Americans. This is what my husband told me recently, and that blew my mind away. I always think about American sports, like a lot of the sports in the US, like baseball, American football, as a great pastime, and it is. For Chinese who doesn't know much about America and think life in the US is so boring, that's because you have never been to a real game in the US. If you get the chance, I highly encourage you to go to a live game when you have the opportunity to see 50,000 people cheering and trash talking each other. Then you know sports in the US is really like a holiday in China. When people are having a great time and enjoying some great food while being entertained. But ever since my husband told me this after COVID, and you have seen a lot of because the Black Lives Matter movement, a lot of the professional sports has been delayed. For example, NBA the championship game has been delayed from June to now, recently, October. And they've been playing like a bubble, so no one can leave till they're done with the game. And a lot of the people wear BLM jerseys, and even the floors, have those letters. So what's going on? Why we're mixing sports with politics? After I did a little bit deep digging last night, this concept of sports as a pacifier, certainly not from my husband. It was actually by a professor from Bowling Green State University, a sociologist called Dr. Snyder. I happened to get my PhD from that same institution, so I was very proud. Oh, that's my professor, even though he's probably long gone now. So he really laid out the concepts of the sports having the positive function of entertaining, great pastime, but also he laid out the negative function of sports, which can serve as a pacifier and a status quo for a lot of people. The origin of the sports. You guys probably know more than I do, but do you know the origin of American football? When we're talking about football in the US, we're not talking about soccer, like most people, Chinese people think in China. We're talking about American football. It's actually originated through a combination of the British soccer and the rugby game. It was polished and pushed by this guy called Camp. I forgot Water Camp, in the late 19th century and early 20th century from Yale University. But I didn't fully understand this game until I sitting a guest speaker talk by a Native American lady who illustrated this game with the settlers, West movements, the frontier, how they gained the territory in the early history of the US, and the conflicts between Native Americans and white Americans. Ever since then, I got it. It is about yard games. Once I understand that, it helped me understand the origin of the sports and how to understand this game. So sports is never that simplistic as you may think it is. It's always mixed with history and politics. So why I think it's okay to mix? Number one reason, if you say we should clearly separate private life and politics and private life and professional life. So in your profession, at work, you should not talk about politics. With this digital age we live in, it's hard, everything's get blurred. It's hard to separate that. One example, a lady in the Denver Health, a doctor, she posted some picture comparing Michelle Obama with a chimpanzee, and she got fired. The examples can go on and on. The lines has been blurred, my friends. Second point, I think with great ability, with great power, comes with great responsibility. So that's a Peter Parker's principle, which I firmly believe. And I do think the celebrities have the right to do the right thing when they want to do it. And we should applaud them for doing that. They don't need to dazzle us with their gold toilets and sports cars anymore. And they have all the right to care about their own community. And wake up normal Americans, we're not number one anymore. In terms of basic education, the US ranked 100th in the world. 40% African Americans are on welfare or need some public assistance. There are many social issues bubbling underneath: social unrest, poverty, segregation, injustice, just to name a few. How can we turn the blind eyes on these social issues and just want to have a great time? Third, I think it should be up to the franchise. When you have a franchise that 80% of your players are African Americans, I think it's up to the franchise to decide whether they want to encourage this cause or not. So, my fellow friends, Chinese Americans, if you want to know more about US and China relationship, go read my book. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Yuanting.
Oh my goodness, Ann, I was trying to count votes and then didn't realize I was also up next. I guess I can get back to the vote counting. Yuanting, wow. Let me get my notes over here in front of me so it appears that I'm speaking to the camera, of course. Wow, I think one of the things that always impresses me is that you're not afraid to tackle some controversy. And it is not an easy thing, especially right now where this very topic, the whole Black Lives Matter movement, the problems that you're seeing with sports is in the forefront of just about everybody's mind. And I think that you handled it quite well, and I have a few suggestions for handling it in your books, your Chinese and English copies of your books. For starters, you had a great intro for the Toastmaster. I don't think that you intended for him to include me in your intro. That may or may not have been the case. But I thought that your intro summed up things very, very well to get you rolling and establish you as something of an expert on it. I think one of the things that you might want to consider working on, and really this is everything else, is along with everything else, there's no need to indicate that the speech won't be perfect. Nobody knows that. Nobody knows that you just wrote it last night. And if you hadn't said anything, they would never know. Unless there was somebody in the audience like me who could have said to Marty, what'd you do, write this speech last night? But don't call attention to that. There's no need for it. Some other things to think about. I think that the background was a bit distracting, and I know you were using it to set for your own timing and know that you weren't going over. It was a great way to have time management, but I think for the audience, because you were moving, it caused you to digitize a little bit, and parts of your head and your hands disappeared at times. So you may not want to use a background when you're speaking. In your topic, you had some transitions between soccer and then getting into the political movement, and your transitions were a little confusing. And I felt that you kind of jumped from one to the other and back again, and it didn't have as smooth a flow as I would have liked to have seen. Once again, I absolutely loved your passion. Always love your passion. It's you are a firm believer in what you say. There's no doubt about that. And that you researched some of the reasons for the problems with this mixture of sports and politics. We're not talking about soccer. I thought that was hilarious because it seems that everybody in the world calls football or calls soccer football, and we don't call soccer football. And then you said something, you had a quote from Peter Parker. Did you mean Peter Parker, the Spider-Man Peter Parker? Oh, you did. Okay. So that kind of surprised me, bringing in a Marvel hero for that. Overall, one of the things, the last thing I would say is try to make sure that if you're interjecting opinion, that you say it's your opinion. But for your books, I would recommend that you try to have an even balance and present both sides so that you don't turn off one side or the other. Overall, loved the speech, loved to hear you speak every single time, and I'm glad that you really get after these things. Back to you, Madam General Evaluator.